Hello and welcome. As Mark says, what?
Yeah, there's no technical difficulty.
Hello and welcome to our bi-weekly Devstream. Okay, so I learned. Look, I actually looked up. What I'm supposed to say. Bi-weekly can mean either twice a week or every 2 weeks. So it can be either one. So I'm going to continue to say bi-weekly because the English language is silly. Also, you'll notice that there's no HB, so we have all this room. Mark's actually not off screen today. He's actually totally in frame, and it looks good. So he's off in the land of the rising sun, and we are without him today. And I don't know what we're gonna do except talk about some cool stuff. Isn't that right, Mark?
Yeah, there's a big update coming. We sort of, the way that we loosely planned things and then at the same time things naturally fell together was to have several really big updates a year, or at least larger than usual. And the first one this year was World Conquest update. And then we had the Amphibious update back in June, I believe it was. And 017 is going to be another big update. And these are the ones where we sort of change pretty large parts of the game, and the game hopefully will feel pretty different, whether different in a good way, we hope, but maybe not in some ways.
Well, I think it's going to be controversial.
Exactly. But that's fine because you guys have been with us for a long time. You know that we just keep on changing things, keep on iterating, and if things don't work out quite well, then we'll fix it in the next update. But this has been a big update. We've been working on it for a while, and we're going to walk through a lot of the changes today. So
yeah, I mean, I think for some people it still feels like they just got like 0.16.
Yeah,
which is pretty wild from our perspective because we've had 0.16 done for
it's crazy because the development pipeline, I've talked about this previously, but the development pipeline is very different when you have a team of 14 people versus a team of 8, which is the size of the team when we first started working, or when we worked on the early access launch on Foxhole, and it definitely with more people you need to do more planning. The pipeline is longer. You're working on stuff much more ahead of time, and you're not just sort of saying, hey, we're just gonna put in all these changes in this 1 week and then we're gonna roll it out like what we did in the old days. And at the same time the game is more matured as well. That's another reason for sure. And there's more people playing the game than it was in pre-alpha, so we also have to make sure that we're not too reckless when making changes, that we're also fixing a good number of bugs and keeping the game stable. And it's a different beast, right? It's a very different beast from what it was. I
mean, when we first started putting out updates for Foxhole, we were like an agile team of 7.
Well, I think the original prototyping team was 3 or 4.
Oh yeah.
when we were playing around with a few ideas, and then we brought everyone else on.
I think it was me, HB, and Stefan.
Yeah.
Originally, and and Adam, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot of really different from those days. And I think it's been really it's been exciting though, because we're actually ahead of schedule for the first time.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we're gonna without HB,
we're gonna make an attempt at
doing highlights,
community highlight snippets, but we're not gonna be as charismatic as HB. So
I lost my mouse cursor. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
HB is usually the one who handles this, so if we totally butcher it, we tried.
Yeah. I'm so glad that we've gotten one of these recently, because it's been a while. There have been several takes on this newspaper style reporting of the war that we've seen several times. This must be the 4th or 5th time that we've seen this done, and every single time it started off, I think the very first one didn't even have like the text, like real stories written in the text. It was just like a bunch of like gibberish, and then slowly we started getting the real stories in, and it's been a while. So I've always loved these. I think the team has always loved to see these, and it's amazing to sort of see this again, right?
I really like the sort of cartoon on the bottom as well, and like just looking at the font and the way things are laid out, it actually kind of looks like an older newspaper. It actually says Illustrated Weekly Newspaper, which is really interesting. Although there's like just a screenshot on the right, but still.
And I love the name of the paper,
the Legionary Weekly.
Legionary Weekly. It plays into the lore. It's really cool. Price 5 Warden tanks.
That's funny.
Bit much, but this is really cool.
Someone should have come up with like a cool currency.
Yeah.
Someone being me. Anyway.
This is a really cool idea, because this is something that some people within the studio have been really passionate about. So sort of seeing a concept of how a loading screen might look, with hints for the games and a little bit of lore, and showing off some of the concept art. I think that this one definitely made the rounds at the office, and I think that I know there's people on the team that are like, man, I just want to do something like this, and I think we will eventually. I think we will do it eventually. It's just it's always the right place and the right time. But in lieu of actually having it in the game, I think that this concept has done a good job in sort of showing off what loading screens might look like eventually. And this was done by Lurkis, and I think he did a really good job. It's good to see these concepts, and there's actually a whole bunch of them. It's not just one. I think in the full community highlights post, there's a whole series of them. I think there's one for every map. Actually, it's crazy.
Actually, question.
Yeah.
What is this map?
It's the Great March.
Oh, that's what the river is. Okay, the Great March.
Yeah.
I thought it was
like a custom map.
I thought it was like a custom thing. I thought for a minute I thought it was Upper Heartlands or Heartlands, and I was like, "What is that river?" Okay, that makes so much more sense.
Yeah, it's because half of it is like faded away, so it probably threw you off there. But
I find it interesting that like the description of the map is there, because that's my description.
Right.
And at least I think it is. I've noticed that some of the descriptions that actually haven't been seen in the game have made it into like posts, and I find that I don't know how they're getting them.
Yeah, I think at one point there was probably a build where the descriptions are there, or maybe like event servers, or I don't know. At some point they were exposed, but they're certainly not exposed now. So they're probably on the wiki, I'm sure. But in any case,
yeah, they might be. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And I thought that the graphic design was very sharp on these.
No, it looks good. I think
it looks great.
I think it'd be a cool way to like highlight some things that we don't always get a chance to show everyone, because not everyone who plays the game is on the Discord or following like social media stuff or anything.
That's really good point. Like some people just play the game and they might not have even seen some of this concept art.
Exactly.
Which is really cool.
For sure. Also, people were saying that I forgot my own map, but I actually didn't. I think I designed the very, very first version, but I didn't actually make it, just so everybody is aware.
So this is a war report themed in, I guess, in the style of like an actual like physical like report, and I don't think we've seen anything like this one before, Matt. This is really cool. And I always like to see these because something that's in the pipeline that we've been wanting to work on for so long is an updated version of the war reports that we used to do we used to do war reports back before in the pre-alpha, where we would list out
everything,
every item that was produced, and literally every player that participated too, which will be a lot harder now because it's not just a couple of hundred, it's like a couple of thousand that span like an entire war, at least. So we wouldn't be able to list everyone's name, but it's these. I like the theming and I like the report. The idea of a report makes so much sense in Foxhole, and when I see this, it's like it makes me feel like players understand the game, players understand what we're trying to do, and we're all kind of on the same page, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know, the idea of a report is super exciting for me.
It looks like those old videos that KFC used to make.
Yes,
if that makes
those
sense.
like the debriefings or was it the
he'll be able to say more. I think he's in the chat.
Why did he stop making them?
I don't know. You should keep making those. That's your new task.
You should keep making them
every week. But they used to like be these long, I think they were like hour-long videos that break down every like front and action in the war with like arrows that were like drawn across the map, and as he like talked over them, and then would like show like specific snippets that he was involved in. It was cool.
I used to watch those on the subway, and like really? And then like people would be giving me looks like, what the hell are you watching? Like, why are you watching a war documentary or something? Like, it's really weird. But
yeah, so these are, I still think we don't unfortunately see enough of these, and I think like it could be on us to provide more tools to allow this stuff to get like pulled easier. But
yeah, well, I mean, we can
right?
always add it to the War API and let people generate these using real data. Imagine a themed version like this using actual data.
That'd be really, really cool.
Yeah, and I think it's been on our to-do list for a while to expose the war reports. That'd probably be the way to do it. Expose it to the API. We actually use the API ourselves if we want to do a version of it that's shown in the game, but then players can use the exact same API that we use to do a fancier version that they'll probably do a much better job than us at it.
I think it'd be really cool to see also this type of thing just be able to like play back in real time. Like you can like scrub, like there's like a slider and you can like scrub on it and like just see all the things happen on like a real time map.
Yeah.
Someone should make that.
Yeah. I mean, we need
sure. We need like a really good API for it, but that's really exciting. Oh man, more stats. This is the
stats heavy.
This is the stats community highlights.
But this was a census. It was done by Leo, and I think this is the second one. And these are always really cool. It's surprising how even the faction distribution is, and how relatively small the neutral group is, because there's always this perception that like neutrals are like swinging the war, and it's actually relatively small, and that population split between Europe and North America is also not exactly surprising. I mean, it's kind of like I think
cool. It's actually interesting that there's like the biggest player base is European, which I would have expected North American. Yeah,
and I mean, it's just. I like the where you guys came from, right? And it's mind blowing the percentage that came from the Comet prototype. That is really crazy if you think about it, because 12%. Comet prototype was only around for like, I think not even 2 months. It was there for maybe like 1.5 months, and like it's mind boggling. That's actually a good lesson to learn, Matt. Like. Yeah. The initial community has such a strong is still such a strong part of the game, even though when you get exposed to like hundreds of thousands of other players throughout pre-alpha, throughout the early access launch, but it's still that first group of players that still makes up such a huge part of the community, and that's crazy.
To me, like you guys are the anchor on which everything else is built, and it shows like it's actually pretty crazy that the Steam launch is still such a massive number too. I figured maybe we would have picked up a lot along the way.
It's also like another thing I guess maybe we need to consider is that what is the bias of someone that is more likely to have been a part of this census, right? Because maybe there's this much larger segment that isn't part of the Discord, isn't part of the Reddit, and perhaps like there'll be some extra numbers there. But in any case, I think this is really awesome. I think this is really cool, and it's also see why Foxhole and large scale warfare makes me so happy to see that there, because
that was the goal, right?
It's the goal, right? Like people aren't here for like a run and gun shooter. People aren't here for like watch some cool like CGI videos that we don't have, or people aren't here for other weird reasons. People are here for large scale warfare and for the logistics, and that's really awesome. I was gonna swear, but I decided not to. But it's really awesome.
I could swear for you. Yeah. What is the favorite game role there? Is that logistics?
It's a bit it's still frontline soldiers.
Okay.
Right. So
I can't read it from here. It looks
it's
too
a bit small.
for me.
But anyways, that's
but you'll be able to see this on. Is this going to be on the community highlights or is it already?
Yes.
Is it already out?
The community highlights. I don't believe it's out yet, but it's going to be coming soon. I know the post was being put together, so you'll be able to see this and more in the community highlights post that should be up sometime this week. So,
okay, great. Cool. That's really cool. That's exciting. Okay.
Cool. Well, let's
get into the meat.
Yeah, so like a lot of this stuff is not a big surprise because we've been talking about parts of this since like 2 streams ago, 2-3 streams ago. So there's not going to be a lot of whole new stuff here, but there is going to be. It's sort of a summary of what actually ended up making it into this update. So I'm just going to walk through each of the major features, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll be able to get a pretty good idea of what's going to be coming. So
this is talking about feature. This is the full like feature set of 0.17, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. This isn't like the teases we've done for the last couple of weeks.
No.
Okay.
This is like the spec. Like,
okay, great.
This is what we're short of any unforeseen circumstances. This is what's going to be coming. First of all, it's called the Industry of War Update. And we're sort of like revamping how things like production, refining, progression, and all that stuff works. And this is a really cool concept promo image that Julian worked on.
You guys saw a little bit of it if you're in the round table.
Yeah, we sort of posted a little fragment of it, and someone thought that the 2 smokestacks on the right were actually rockets. Well, I don't think they actually thought it was rockets, but they sort of turned into a joke, and they're like, "Oh, I guess it's rockets are coming."
Could be, if you really use your imagination.
Let's start walking through some of the features. First, structure decay prevention. So this is something we haven't actually specifically discussed yet in terms of the mechanics. So how it's going to work is if you have structures in the radius of your garrison, so basically within the radius of a fob, within the radius of a town hall, your structures will not decay if garrison supplies are stockpiled at that base, right? But this requires a small garrison facility, and that will actually allow you to do this. And if you have a large garrison facility, then the drain of garrison supplies is reduced. Right. So really what we want to do is we want players to focus on fewer bases, but try to build them up to be more like permanent, as opposed to just spamming lots of bases all over the place, and then everything loses all sense of meaning.
Could you really quick, just for anybody who might have missed it, go over what a facility is?
That's a good point. Particular? Yeah. So facilities is something we discussed in a previous dev stream, but basically they are modules that you can add to existing structures. This is a new gameplay idea that is going to be introduced in 0.17 and that we're going to use in the future to extend the functionality of lots of different structures. So it's sort of laying the groundwork. 0.17 is sort of the first update to be utilizing this.
It almost allows a bit of like modularity within some of our different production structures.
It's like think like in StarCraft, when you add in a module to your vehicle factory, and then
the comms center, and then suddenly you can scan.
Yeah, like your comms satellite thing that you attach to your whatever that structure was.
Command center, I think.
The command center, and you can so this is exactly that sort of thing. And so this is basically. The UI will tell you if the base is currently preventing structure decay, and it'll tell you, okay, you need a small garrison facility. And once you built the small garrison facility, as you can see in the facilities bar at the bottom, you can see that the small garrison facility is built. And then, but you don't have any garrison supplies, so it's still not going to prevent structure decay. But if you add garrison supplies in your stockpile, then now this base is preventing decay. Right. And if you want to maintain these permanent bases, you have to stockpile them with garrison supplies on a regular basis. And this is the starting point of how we're gonna allow players to build more permanent bases in the world. And it's gonna take a lot of balancing to get right, but this is a starting point. We know it's taken a while to get here, but we just didn't want to like tack on a solution. We want to make sure that it was integrated with other things we were planning. And in this case, it was the facilities, as opposed to just some other weird thing. And yeah, well, we're gonna have to see how it works out. So yeah.
For some clarification, facilities are also, they are not FOBs.
They are not FOBs.
Yes. Just so everybody is aware, they're not like, this isn't going to be like on the front line. This is going to be near production structures and things like that.
Well, it's wherever, like, you have the option to build the facilities at whichever base.
Whatever base you want.
Whichever base you want. But what you're saying, I think what you're saying is that you might not want to do this at the front, because if you lose your base, right?
Oh, hold on. So let me get this clear. You can build it on an FOB?
Yes.
Okay, great. There you go. Everybody knows the answer now. So I'm right. I actually didn't think that was the case, but that's even better.
Yeah.
Perfect.
You can 100%. You can 100% build.
I thought it was only buildable on like the town basis. Great. There you go.
You can build it at FOBs. So
you can create your own, like, you can dig in wherever you want.
But there is one thing. There's a couple of things that you should be aware of, and that is when an FOB is destroyed now, it leaves behind a husk, right? And the enemy can capture your FOB. So this is a new twist that's going to change things up, because if you start spamming your FOBs everywhere and you add these very expensive and valuable facilities to them, and you leave them unprotected because you like spamming bases everywhere, then guess what? The enemy can come right in, they can capture your facilities, and that's going to be very bad news if that happens. So there's more of a trade-off now. There's more of a risk, and we're excited to see where that goes, right? Because you might want to be more careful where you place your files from now on.
That seems pretty cool, actually. Now that you've broken it down that way. Sorry, I actually didn't realize we were going to have these on FOBs. That's amazing.
Yep. So there's more changes involved here. I'm gonna leave it for the dev branch for you guys to go in there and like explore. There's a couple of other changes, but there's so much to get through. I'm just gonna move on.
Great.
Cool. So this is the new refinery and the new refinery screen. So a couple of things have changed here. First of all, there are the facilities. So you can't refine a resource until the corresponding facility has been built. Now at the port bases, the facilities are all going to be built, so they behave just as they do now. So there's going to be no change there. But when you build a refinery at the front, you have to build the facilities before you can use it. So even though there's going to be a lot of refineries in the world, you're going to have to pick and choose where you build these facilities. And another thing I should discuss is the other two resources that you can refine into now, which is the upgrade parts and the research parts. So basically, your tech parts, you collect them just as you did previously, right? So they're quite rare, and they can refine into your research parts, which go into the tech center just as before to research new items and weapons, and then your upgrade parts are there to build your facilities, right? So upgrade parts are quite valuable, and you won't want to just waste them everywhere. So we want you guys to really be sure about where you spend these, so that, again, to reduce the amount of just spamming everything pretty much like everywhere, which there's no trade-off there, there's no risk, and that's something that we want to change. Another cool thing about the tech parts is that we're increasing the drop rate slightly to account for the upgrade parts, and at the same time we added a bad luck protection to the parts, so that basically what that means is that you won't sometimes in the game now you won't get a tech part for so long because it's all random, and if you get a bad like dice roll pretty much and you keep on getting these bad rolls, then you'll go a long time without having a tech part. But we made some changes so that you can only go on a bad luck streak for so long, and eventually like you'll get a part, so that should make it slightly less frustrating.
That seems pretty reasonable, especially given that they're going to be even more integral to sort of the flow of tech in the game.
Yeah, exactly. And
they're called tech parts, of course they are.
It was Rohan who sort of pushed for this, and I think it's a great feature, so you can thank him for it. I think he did a great job on it. And yeah, is anything else about this refinery? I mean, I think the model looks great personally. I love these these new logic structures, I would say. Right? So moving on to the new factory. So there's a lot of things going on here. The facilities work the same way as they do on a refinery. You can't produce a certain category of an item until the corresponding facility is built, right? And I guess before we even talk about that, we should take a step back and talk about how the factory works. We talked about it previously, but it's good to do a review. Basically, all the production structures have been merged into this one factory structure. So you can make everything here. You have 5 queues corresponding to the 5 different categories. You have your small arms, your utilities, your special weapons, your medical, and your supplies. And each one has their own queue. So in terms of the amount of output that you have, it's the same as before. It's the same as having like one of each, but the weapon factory has been split into 2, so you can kind of like parallelize there, where you couldn't previously. And another cool thing about the new UI is that you don't have to go to all these different screens. Like in the old UI for producing items, you have to first click on the make order button, and then you sort of choose your items, and then you hit OK, and it sort of like switches you between these 2 screens. But now it's all on the same screen. And also, if you want to cancel specific items, you can just click on the item in the order itself. So in the old one, it was very common that you would make a mistake and you have to cancel the entire order and start all over. But now you can just click on the specific item. So this UI is more flexible, and we hope it's going to help. And I think one cool thing too is, this is a small detail, but I think it's neat, is that you can visually see which facilities are built, because the visuals on the actual factory model will change.
Yeah,
right?
So where those crates are with like a tarp over it, different things will appear there to let you know what facilities are actually built.
Yeah, so if you're scouting the enemy, you can actually see, okay, is this a weapon producing factory? Is this a supply producing factory? If you get close enough and you actually physically look at the structure. Right?
Yeah.
So
some of this stuff seems like a really big change, and it is. But I think once you start playing with it and getting used to it, you'll come around on it.
I think to be honest, I think the UI is going to take some time to get used to.
Yeah.
And I think it will be weird at first.
Yeah, it definitely was for us. Like, because we've seen it, we've lived with it for a little bit.
Well, it's because it's baked into like our muscle memory, right?
Yeah.
And we everything is like second nature. You kind of are used to where things are. But the good thing about this new UI is that you're actually traveling less space to try to get to everything. You're not going across the whole screen. Things flow in a much more natural direction, as opposed to like clicking there back and forth. You're actually going from like one part of the UI to the next part in a very specific sequence. And
there's also like quality of life things, like the filters that you see at the top there under items and things like that should make a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, just being able to anyways, this is one of those things where you guys need to try it out for yourself. And I think the thing that we're most concerned about is if a specific flow that used to be faster than the new UI, if that comes up, then that's something that that you need to let us know, and we can try to fix it. Because one of the things that we don't want to do is make certain flows slower than they used to. We only want to make it faster, right? Visually speaking, it might take some time to get used to. So you're gonna have to give it time, but it's definitely not. It's not perfect, and there might be certain flows that we haven't considered. So please give us your feedback in the dev branch, and we can take a look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exciting though.
Yeah.
All right. What's
cool?
next?
Storage facility.
So
this is a new structure, cool. Right? So this is. We talked about it before. It's basically a stockpile for your crates, and there's really nothing much more to it than that, because its functionality is very simple, but it's something that I think could be very helpful when, especially for your backline bases where you kind of don't really want all your items stuck in the town hall. So this is something that we'll see how it works out, and we can add features to it in the future.
I think this is gonna make a huge impact in like mid and late game, like crazy, like in terms of just resupplying and like for lack of a better word, stockpiling.
Yeah.
I think this will like change the game, because now it's not just sort of like hovering in one spot and all your stuff is stuck. Like that made a huge difference in like slowing things down.
Yeah, like you'll be able to sort of like decouple what you're doing back at the port bases and still be helpful to the front line. You don't have to do it all at once.
Yeah, exactly.
You can sort of put a lot of things in your stockpile, your port base. Someone else can come along in a later session and they can use those things you put in there, right? So this is something else to look forward to. This is kind of cool. So all I'm saying is that parts of the world have changed, right?
Yeah.
If you want to talk a little bit about this, about these new areas that we've added to each town.
Yeah. So like one thing to keep in mind is we, as a result of this, we had to change some things. So the workshop and the armories, like we used to have like these 2 armories, and there was sort of all these little structures that we had all over the world, including the hospital. They're all gone now. Those are gone. They were replaced with this, and you'll notice that in a lot of the towns now, there's going to be like this industrial sort of like wing to a lot of the towns, where the stuff's not going to be so far away from each other, I don't think, anymore. For the most part, you're going to see little areas like this where it's like you're going to have like a sort of a crafting area that should be like neatly. I think this might be a weird exception, because this town is a really strange. This is not a town. This is like an outpost, right? Callahan's Belt is. I think this is Callahan's Belt. It's a really weird place, but for the most part, they're going to be nestled like nicely. I
put it there because of the train tracks.
Yeah, the train tracks are cool.
It's sort of a hint on how they might work with the storage facility in the future. I don't know, right?
Yeah, it kind of looks like a train station a little bit. Like if you really.
I'm just saying, storage facility trains.
But yeah, so they're going to be like nestled into the town, so you're going to be able to protect them and that type of thing. So I think it'll be kind of interesting. There's a little bit of visual updates across the board. I think these new the art guys did a really like phenomenal job on these new buildings. They sort of evoke a feeling that we've been trying to capture for a little while. And I think so, and I think that we've been trying to go for a certain level of quality and fidelity on the structures since the start of the project, and I think that these new buildings are kind of that first step of like, this is going to be the standard like moving forward. When we eventually go to revamp a bunch of the other structures in the game, they're gonna look like this, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's exciting. That's very exciting. Like
the town revamp stuff that's coming up. Like,
just imagine a whole
town like this.
At the visual bar of this, which I can't wait.
Yeah, me neither. I think it'll be really fun. I think, what's really funny is people in the chat are saying like, oh, trains confirmed or train tracks confirmed. And it's really funny because like, I don't know if you guys know, but these literal train tracks have been in there since like the second update. So if that's your cue, I don't know. But anyway,
that's another thing. Yeah.
So our port bases are really different. I redesigned the port bases. I know that they're not quite as interesting looking, and these are probably going to update over time as we sort of get more comfortable with this. But we needed to create a workflow that allowed us to easily update port bases. As you all know, there have been a lot of bugs with port bases in the past. So we tried to do something that streamlined them and made them exactly the same for both our pipeline purposes and to streamline them for production purposes.
Absolutely. And I think that functionally speaking, you'll spend less time just driving around, hitting other trucks, which is usually the old bases used to be kind of hard to like navigate. I know we kind of like tried our best to have a lot of space, but you'd probably be spending less time just trying to make your way around the bases, right? Yeah.
It's also worth noting these are not exactly like quote unquote port bases anymore. They're just called bases now.
Yeah, but we've kept
there will still be ports. I think internally it's still port based, but
maybe it'll change at some point. But I hear you.
There's really and one of the other big things you'll notice is there's only one entrance. Now we can change this in the future if we feel like we need to, but this was something I really wanted to do for a long time to focus away all of the like spawn camping and stuff. It should be pretty hard to do at this point.
Well, like another good thing is that if we wanted to, what this sets us up for is if we need to make changes now, we can do it way faster.
Yeah, across the whole game with one
spell. So if it turns out, hey, we need like another door at the back, right? We can do that way easier now, and we won't be stuck with it for like a long time, or it won't take like a whole lot of time to do it, right?
Yeah, so. And these may get, like I said, these may get more exciting looking in the future, but as with an early access game, we were going to try a couple new things, and this is built purely for functionality and ease of use, and we'll see how that goes. And as things evolve, so too will these bases.
Yes. Friends list.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's another cool 017 thing coming that we discussed previously. And to do a recap of it, basically you can, any player you see in the world, where you can access their contacts menu either from the operations list or from the in-game character contacts menu, you can add them as a friend. And then from that point forward, if they're online, then you will see them in your player list on the right-hand side of the screen. So this is really put in there so that a lot of times we see players that will post on the Reddit, or they'll be basically telling us a story that, hey, they had such a great time, and they'll be asking, hey, like if you're out there, such and such player, it'd be cool if you saw this, and then they don't have a way to find those players again. And this is there to make sure that if you had a good experience with certain players, if you had a cool like war story, that you can add them to your friends list, and then next time you come back in, you can see if they're online, and you can try to get in touch with them. You can whisper them from this menu, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see where this takes us.
Yeah, I think these sort of like, social lists could have a really bright future in Foxhole, the more we sort of figure out how they're being used.
Yeah, exactly. And players being able to, I think if you're part of a clan, it's a bit of a different experience. But if you're not part of a clan, which a lot of players are not part of clans, you just want to get in touch with people that you played with, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not always the easiest thing. And this will only, I think, strengthen the amount of like socializing in the game, right? Mm-hmm. So this is,
which is where I think like it's one of the strengths of our game as well.
That's the point. Fisherman's Row, you guys have seen this. I won't get into it. Yes, it's crazy, but one thing I will say is, because I kind of like, I know a lot of you guys are thinking, oh, another island. There's a very specific reasons why we're doing these islands. Really, we would probably not be making that many more maps, but we have this weird problem that's sort of meta to the actual game itself.
It's kind of unique to Foxhole as a problem as well.
When we get these player spikes, we want to be able to handle scale up and scale down the conquest, and the island maps are the way that we can do that. It doesn't mean that we're never going to expand on the mainland. That's definitely a possibility. But when you guys see us do this, and you guys are thinking yet another island map, there's a very specific reason. Because we don't want extra players to have to play in some extra weird mode like the event browser, which we had to turn to in the past when there was too many players. Like, we want every player playing to be able to participate as part of the main war, right? And this is our current solution to that. And I think that that's sort of, when you guys think about that in the future, just know that this is where it kind of comes from, right?
So a couple things worth noting too is like a lot of people are comparing this to Orbreaker, and I would say this is pretty different from Orbreaker in a lot of ways, because Orbreaker is this like archipelago of islands. There's only one space that you can't get to, and that's the old Fisherman's Row map, but you don't start there. Like, I think a lot of people may be thinking that you start there, which is why there's a lot of like sort of, oh, this is just like Orbreaker, you start on a small island and expand. Actually, you start on the bigger mainland at the north and south islands there, and everything is connected. You can drive from point A to point B, except for that old Fisherman's Row.
I mean, really, it's more like a donut, which is how we kind of thought about it at the beginning, where you can do, basically, you can do like amphibious landings anywhere within the hole in the middle.
This map wins most beaches. As well. So,
right.
You know.
Yeah, so I mean, we're gonna do more islands, just a heads up. At least one more.
I know that like initially when we started talking about this, there's a bit of pushback, of course, because we've had some islands, but it does make a lot of sense, and I hope you guys do enjoy it. And I think Crazy Flying Chicken did a really, really good job on this map. I think it's a really exciting map. It's really interesting. It's unlike other maps in the game.
I think it's very different.
Just in terms of the sort of like atoll sort of feeling. It will look a little bit different. It will feel a little bit different. But it should still feel. I think he did a really good job of sort of maintaining that Fisherman's Row spirit. So I hope that you guys like it, because I know Fisherman's Row is kind of a fan favorite.
Yeah. And I'm excited to see the amphibious landings that happen on this map. It's really exciting.
Also, you will be able to, I don't know if this is going to happen right away, but you will be able to travel to other places in World Conquest.
Yeah.
It has been set up for that. So just like an Orbreaker.
Cool. So there's a couple more changes, smaller changes. We converted the old hospital church into a garrison. So there's a new garrison building in the world.
So if you thought the hospital was going away, it's really not. It's just becoming more dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. We cleaned up the HUD, so that's something you'll be able to see in the dev branch. But basically, we're not blocking as much of the view anymore, because we felt like we've been slowly encroaching more and more on the viewport real estate with the new chat and with the player list. So we have taken away some space, but to kind of make up for it, we've sort of pushed things more to the edge and kind of made things smaller where it made sense. There's been some rocks and trench bridge updates, visuals. This is an ongoing process of like replacing some of the older assets in the game. New combat mechanics tuning. So we had the combat revamp in the last update, and something that we went back to tune is we weren't happy with how slow it took to settle pistols and revolvers. When you first pull them out, they took a very long time, and just speaking from like the realism standpoint, that you would think it's easier to draw a pistol and settle it. So there's been some changes there to support faster settling for these two weapons, and we've updated some of the foliage visibility mechanics so that you will only be hidden if you're standing still in foliage for a while. And I think this one we're gonna have to do a bit more testing to further tune it. So we'd like to hear your feedback on it, because it does have a pretty big impact on the gameplay, in particular with foliage heavy maps like the Heartlands. So we really want to see your feedback on that. Another change. This is sort of a
this is cool,
half community thing, but we're actually supporting it a bit more this time with actual content. So FCL Season 3 is starting. Talk to Crazy Flying Chicken about this. He knows the most about it, and he's managing the whole thing. So basically, FCL, for those of you who don't know, is a competitive league that has had 2 seasons already. They do smaller scale. Well, I think the rules are changing this time, but I'll say in the past they've done smaller scale type of battles, and Different clans all get involved in this, and this is going to be the third season. I think there's big changes coming, and there's even a custom map that is going to be built specifically for the FCL, and this is just sort of a teaser of that map. As you can see this screenshot in the back. If you want to register, go to the Discord, the FCL Discord. The address is at the bottom there, so you'll be able to get everything you need to know there if you want to register. So yeah, if you want to play Foxhole competitively, this is where you should go. So
it's really exciting. I've poured over this map. It's really interesting, and I think it'll be really interesting for competitive purposes. It's not really like a lot of our maps are extremely like asymmetrical, and this is not.
I think the one thing that is nice of having a separate map is that like we don't have to. The FCL doesn't have to specifically play by all the rules that the normal game has to have. We don't have to like try to like compromise, you know, between these things, and it's kind of its own separate map with the requirements made for this style of gameplay, and it's kind of cool because we don't have like modding, right? We have event servers and we have stuff like this, and I see this as like some, I guess almost like a form of a mod in a way, right? But obviously done with help from someone on our team, right? So it's
let's just say Crazy Flying Chickens has been very busy.
Yeah.
This last patch, you guys should thank.
Is it all the features? It's a lot of features.
A lot of features, yeah. Actually, you know, we've all been. I think this patch has been pretty crazy for the whole team.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm really excited for you guys to get your hands on it.
Yeah, and it's gonna be coming next Wednesday, right? Hope I got all those numbers right. I usually get the dates wrong, but next 26th is the Wednesday.
Unless, of course, you guys don't finish the war. Oh, you can't see my face. I'm looking directly in the camera.
Oh, the war is finishing. Trust me. We'll talk about that, but there's gonna be a date to look out for it, and
finish the war by then.
That's kind of it. I think that's all we have to say about 017. The dev branch we're hoping to get out tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. We had some showstoppers that prevented us from pushing it out this afternoon. So with that said, you want to move on to the Q&A?
Yeah, so if you guys want to ask questions, so start asking questions in the chat. As always, I sort of have something I already want to sort of just address.
Sure.
And this is from, what was the name here? Let me get back up here. Zurchin is very concerned that because we removed some of the other production structures, that the towns are going to be kind of more like boring now. They're going to be a little bit more like stale because everything's sort of grouped into one area or something. Trust me, it's coming. There's going to be a town revamp. Yeah. Things aren't going to be stale. It might be, you might have to have a weird like sort of growing pains period for one patch with that stuff, but the towns. I'm working very hard to make sure that the towns become interesting, and so is a whole bunch of members on the team.
Well, I think it's also
we'll be there.
I think it's also something to mention is that I think on the average there's actually more things across in the towns than there was previously because we didn't have the storage facility, we didn't have the refineries or the factories in all the towns. So in fact, I think to some degree there may be the opposite concern where there's like too much. There's like too many things in these towns. Yeah. So I think we can wait and see, right? But I think even if there is an issue, then definitely the town revamp, you know.
I can just tell you there are several people working full time on this town revamp.
Yeah, so but it's not coming anytime
soon. It's not coming soon, but yeah. we're gonna address those concerns, I guess. Like we will definitely get there. I'm just going to ask the first question, and then we'll start going. Oatmeals asks, if you capture an enemy husk, will you have access to the supplies they left? Example: rifles, ammo, RPGs.
Yes, you'll be able to claim their stockpile. You'll be able to claim the facilities that were there, which means that you can build a permanent base there as well. So you get everything basically. I mean, one interesting thought is if you can also claim their static defenses, but that's not there right now.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
On that note, 3SP Salt asks, can we expect more defensive structures like foxholes and pillboxes?
That's a good. That is something that I think we will be revisiting later this year. We have another big update planned at some point later this year that I'm not going to talk too much about. But I think the simple answer is most likely yes. We hadn't worked on anything for a long time because during the pre-alpha there was this phase where we would add in new defense after new defense, and we got so exhausted from it because we were trying to solve this problem of like towns being hard to defend, and we sort of I guess the backlash of that is that we stopped working on new defenses for like a long time. But I think that later this year we might see some things happen there, and some things happening to the garrison houses as well. So,
and that part's very exciting, I think.
Yeah.
Duke Salt asks, will the friends list be integrated in any way with the Steam friends list?
Probably not. I guess what you're referring to is being able to show the Steam your Steam friends list in that friends list. No, this is something that we're managing separately for now, and that doesn't mean that won't ever happen. But I think we're also somewhat starting to plan ahead of like this isn't so. How do I put this? Like how do I put this without saying some stuff that I shouldn't be saying right now? But like we have a long road ahead on Foxhole, and this isn't going to be like, okay, even when we reach like 1.0 at some point, like maybe next year or something, like we're not going to say, okay, it's done, we don't care anymore, and this is it. We want to we're still in a weird way, like just in a weird way, we are still getting started, and we may support other platforms in the future. And we don't really want to necessarily tie ourselves specifically one platform, which is why we haven't jumped on things like integrating Steam's friends list. But that doesn't mean we can't do that. It just means that we'll have to see if there's a need for that, because we have grand plans for Foxhole, and it kind of transcends where things are now, right? So
big plans.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Padfoot asks, will there be more ruined structures in the town revamp? I'm not gonna go into like a lot of detail. I'm not gonna sit here and like spec out the town revamp, but I just would expect more richness in general. Does that sound like a good answer?
Yeah, well, sounds like people are excited about the town revamp.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so.
Yeah.
Is Binseen? Is it Binseen? I don't know how to pronounce her name. Will there be? Will you ever fix the river alignment in Farnack, Deadlands, and Endless?
The river alignment in Farnack, Deadlands.
Farnack to Deadlands to Endless Shore. I think Farnack and Deadlands are fine. It's close enough. But Deadlands to Endless Shore.
The amount of space.
Yeah, Deadlands to Endless Shore is a pretty disparate amount of space, and I would say like in the near future, I don't really think we have plans for that. The conceit here is that the maps do have a difference in space, and I mean, sure, I think you could argue that like traveling from in Endless Shore to Deadlands and back, you can sort of get around quickly. But I would also say like it's a bit of a hassle because you have to cross the river somehow and go around. But I suppose if you're in a boat of some kind, it's a lot faster. That is something that we have to deal with for the time being.
Yeah.
It's not saying we'll never fix it. But
I mean, I imagine we're going to be like evolving the world constantly. So who knows? But like Matt said, probably not anytime in the next couple of months or anything like that. But I honestly like I just said, like from my previous answer, we're going to be evolving the world for a long time to come. So who knows, right?
I mean, there's a few other things like just off the top of my head, just because we're talking about it. There's a few other things that I'd like to fix. Like, why is there a river that goes north from Endless Shore into Weathered and then goes nowhere? And the reason for that is because we came up with Endless Shore before we knew what Weathered Expanse was. Yeah. Similarly, like there's a frozen river from Morgan County that goes into Callahan's Passage, and I'd actually like to include that in Callahan's Passage. But these are all sort of like just things that we haven't been able to like get to because.
I mean, we've talked about doing pretty not that severe, but somewhat some surgery on Farinac Coast to make it more interesting. Yeah. So there's I mean, we may like add a river at some point where there wasn't a river previously, but I think that's what's exciting about this world. Like, because we're going to be changing it, our goal is to make it so it never feels stagnant. I think if we keep feeling, I think at some point if we feel like we're, just sort of playing the same thing over and over again, which to some degree, it's the same game. It's going to be like that to some degree. But as much as possible, we want to feel like, okay, things have changed now. Whether it's like a game mechanics or like the world or something, and then now it feels fresh. Even adding a new bridge, adding a new river, adding a new town, even like removing a town, things like that. I think are things that we want to try out, right? Yeah,
and also like there are some maps that we think are like work pretty well. Like I think we're pretty happy with. Like, I think Heartlands is a pretty good map. Like I don't feel too strongly about. There's maybe the roll cage area could use like if I had to like sit and start picking up some stuff. But I think like Callahan's Passage is a map, for instance, that I think still needs like a lot of love in the long-term future. And I could go on about this, but like the point is that no, we're not specifically like looking to align the rivers, I guess, but like expect more of that in the future. And just keep in mind that the conceit of the game is that you're traveling some space between maps. They're not like right next to each other. If you look at the world map, there's like quite a bit of distance between them. But anyway, let's take another one. Will we see better visuals for low health, like a limp? Says blasphemy, or asks blasphemy.
Well, that's a good question. I think that's I think HB has this long list of things he'd like to do on the animation side. So we'll have to talk to him about that when he gets back. But I think we did talk about showing the bleeding status possibly on the HUD as a status icon to at least help with the clarity of that, because sometimes it's kind of hard to see if you're bleeding. But I think in terms of changing the animations, I think that'd be kind of cool. Even besides visuals, it'd be kind of cool if you're like wounded and you're kind of. That's a great idea, actually. Yeah. Damn. We haven't thought too hard about that. At least I haven't. Possibly some of you guys have. But I think that will really add a lot to the feeling like you're in a war. If there's a random, what? This is a great idea. This is cool. Like, the more I think about it, it's like if there's a chance to bleed, if there was a chance to like cripple or something, and then that actually, or it can just simply be tied into the stagger, right? So that if you're staggered state, then you do. Look drastically different, but yeah, no, that's okay.
Sorry, I'm just getting some. They mean you can't get a gunboat from Farinac to Deadlands because the rivers don't line up. Well, if that's the case, then that's a bug.
Huge bug.
So you should report that. I think I fixed something recently regarding that, but if a gunboat ends up in the dirt every time you try to travel from one place to another, then that's a bug. So
yeah, if that's happening, then we'll fix it in the dev branch. So
that's why I didn't understand the question, because
it might be in the bug system. We need to talk to Jeremiah about it.
I know there was one bug I fixed regarding this recently, so like specifically from Deadlands to Farinac, so maybe we fixed it. But George Michael asks, Matt, are there any more unique lore items in the game? If not, will we expect some? There's a whole bunch that people have not found. I'm not going to tell you how many, because that's not how this works. And there's a whole bunch coming. So, I'm pretty much adding them nearly every update. I think there was a couple updates I haven't. So
I think a town revamp will have some opportunity for that.
Town revamp will probably have a lot, because
Stop talking about time.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking about it.
I'm sorry for bringing it up.
It's all that's on our brains a little bit at the moment. Oh, it's all that's on my brain. Artifact Pleb asks, since resource spawns are too fast that you don't need to farm multiple nodes, you just sit and wait for respawn, would we consider changing the spawn rate?
Yeah, if enough people feel like that's a problem, then definitely you should raise a red flag, talk to Crazy Flying Chicken, talk to me, and we'll take a look at it. If it's a game balancing issue, then and we take a look at it, and we'll have to see where that fits in with our plan for resources and logi, and we'll definitely make balance changes if it's needed, right?
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm gonna ask one more question. Okay, I'm gonna ask two because I got a clarification. But more items like the tin case, you guys just have to find them. I'm not gonna tell you. Okay. I'm gonna ask this, and we're still gonna ask another one. Are you thinking about adding something to restore health? There are items that restore health. You can get med kits and trauma kits.
Are they asking, is there going to be more?
I don't know what more we would, unless you're talking about like get an apple and then like it slowly like restores your health or something.
I think that medical is one area of the game that some really cool ideas have surfaced. Really within the team,
ambulances and stuff.
There's been ideas of like ambulances or like building like a triage center inside like Garrison House and things like that. Because we sort of have these different areas of the game. Like there's the intel game, there's the medical game, there's the logi game, there's the combat game, and so on and so forth. And medical is something that we haven't taken a look at in a long time. So if you guys have any ideas, talk to us about it at the roundtable. Like actually the roundtable is a perfect place to like just sort of have these free form like discussions about stuff like that, where we can have a back and forth.
Usually they're Friday afternoon EST, but
it's usually Fridays after like
early evening.
So basically 1 or 2 more hours, like 1 hour after now, sort of is when it kind of starts. And that's the perfect place because we're going to be there. If you have a question, you can ask, and instead of it just being like a one-way, like sort of a ask and then like give the answer, it can be like a back and forth, right? Which is what the roundtable is great for. We don't always talk about Foxhole. Sometimes we go off and talk about a bunch of other stuff.
I've talked about World of Warcraft, like it's like,
but that's the place where there can be a back and forth, right?
C-Cloud FF7 asks, are you more focused on core gameplay revisions or items and equipment? I'll let you answer that.
I think both, right? We sort of once in a while we will I think this particular update is focused more on the core gameplay. We're not just it's I've always said this. It's really easy to fall into the trap of like more vehicles, more items, more structures, and we just keep on spamming those out there because those are actually the easiest things for us to work on. Like easy, it's still a lot of work. I'm not saying it's a lot of work, but it's not risky, right? Like make a new half track type, make a new rifle type. That stuff is we just do it. Like it's not scary. It's not complicated. But doing something like changing how logi works, or changing the economy, or touching any of that kind of stuff is always very scary, but sometimes necessary to get closer to the goals we have. And I would say 017 is definitely more on that side of things, whereas probably the next couple of updates will be back over to the other side where we're working on more like content.
But at the same time, there's a new map coming. So like,
same time, there's a new map coming. Yeah. There's also the storage facility, and then sort of the third thing besides core gameplay and content. There's also these other tools like player operations, friends lists. Like there's so many different facets to the game that We just have to balance between them and make sure we don't like neglect one of them for too long. There's also maintenance. That's a huge thing that you guys don't see. It's behind the scenes, and because we're going to be maintaining the game for a long time, we also have to spend time on maintenance to ensure that our code, our art pipeline is in a state where we're not just always hacking things up. We're doing things sort of, it's like, you know, if your room is really messy, it's like hard to get anything done, right? Once in a while you have to clean up your room and you're not really doing anything new but cleaning. But then once your room is cleaned up, then you'll be able to do everything else much more effectively. And that's pretty much what I mean when I talk about stuff like maintenance, right?
I think sometimes people, well, I'm not going to say for sure, but sometimes I, even with other games, take advantage of or forget about the fact that like there's this whole server infrastructure behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You just, because at this point in Foxhole, you hit play, you pick your faction, you pick a spot in the map, and you go, right? So, but remember that these are all like things that we have to like manage as well, and I think that puts a lot in perspective when you think about it that way. Like each one of those regions and each one of these things has to be sort of, the wheels need to be greased.
It's like, it's also working on the automation of things at the back end. So like when we first launched World Conquest, managing it was a complete nightmare. Like we had to be doing everything manually, which means that like when people are doing things manually, they can't be spending time on working on new features and other cool things. So then what we have to do is add time to like automate these manual tasks. So whereas we used to need someone to like, it'd be a lot of effort just to even start up the servers, even to start up like the World Conquest shard would be a big deal. We have to manually be there when it finishes. We have to manually be there. Like there's a lot of like manual processes, and that all takes away from our time, right? And so we have to spend a lot of time.
We want to make the game.
We want to make the game. So we try to balance our effort to make sure we reduce the amount of management of that, right? So that's another huge area. Anyways.
Well, that's going to bring us to the end of the stream. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. It was fun. It was just the two of us. It was just a little chat about some big stuff. But we're getting there, and I think I'm really excited about this update. I think you guys should be excited, and I think it's going to be a big change. So give it some time, give it some breathing room. You'll see some of it on the dev ranch. Give us your feedback. We always want to know what you think.
Yeah. And what does HBO always tell people to do? If you're watching on YouTube.
Oh, if you're watching on YouTube, you can watch us live. I think he puts a link somewhere here to our Twitch. You can watch us live, and I don't know what else he says.
Watch it live on every other Tuesday on Twitch at 2 p.m. EST. So cool.
I think that's everything. So well, like we were talking about before, I just want to reiterate, you can come to our roundtable on our official Discord Fridays around 4 EST. ET
3, 4, 5-ish.
Yeah, in the afternoon. There's no exact time.
Yeah,
but
actually,
just hang out.
Sometimes it happens in the evening too if we miss it in the afternoon. So it's really not meant to be like an official thing. It's more if you're there, you can hang out. If you're not, it's fine. You can catch us at the next one.
Cool. And as always, stay foxy.